Hello and welcome back. In the previous episode we started the restoration of two glorious HP 16702 logic analyzers, an A version and a B version, one which booted, the B, and one which did not, the A. We took the machines apart to access the loud fans and the CMOS battery, which was inexplicably buried under a pile of hard-to-remove boards. At least that got us familiar with their PA RISC processors lifted straight out of an HP 9000 workstation, and which ran a full-fledged HP UX OS underneath, the HP version of Unix 5. After a bit of a struggle, we managed to strip our B unit of its noisy fans, and while we wait for replacement batteries and fans, it's time we turn our attention to the A unit and try to figure out why it doesn't boot. On to the other unit, which is a A. And this one has no CD-ROM in it, so you have to connect an external one to revive it. What's behind door 2? Processor with the same dead battery, but at least we can access it, so you can tell what happened. They just added something over this. I bet you the questionable mechanical design is also been probably farmed out, not anywhere close to the previous generation HP stuff. Oh, they also are two fans in the middle. Dang it, I better change my order, add one more fan. This has the stronger fan here. Yeah, that's the one that has the two fan design. There's an opening for a second fan, so instead of putting one big fan here, you replace them with two lower noise fans. Oh, there's one piece of good news though. I think we have the extra memory upgrade in that one. And then there's another card that's the additional video memory that allows you to drive a bigger external screen, which I think goes in here. So we have at least one of the two options, which is great. So on this instrument, I looked at the boot screens and it runs into file check issues. So I suppose the disk is our first target here. It might be bad. The file system is bad for sure. So we have several possibilities here. I can take the disk from the other unit that boots and put it here. They should boot off the same disk. Number 2 is I have an extra disk. I have this fellow over here, which is supposed to be a good disk, although I don't know if that's true. And number 3, we could use the SCSIknife from my friend Antoine. He sells those on Etsy, and he has a whole bunch of versions of these. So this one has the SCSI 50 pin to replace an internal disk. Some with a SCSI 1 termination, some for the Mac, and this one is actually universal. It has the Mac, SCSI 2.5 and a SCSI 3.5 inch. And of course, SCSIknife, I forgot to say, it's a replacement SSD, right, for a SCSI disk. I think the simplest is just to see if it will boot off this disk, and if it does, we copy the disk into an SSD and try to boot it off that. Take this one out, take this one out. It's made out of cheap PC parts. Not my favorite. When that's the way the world is gone, it should be as easy as getting this one in, and it should be configured on address 6, which is fine. I bet you it's straight out of another instrument. Alright, I need to plug in the mouse or it will refuse to boot. That's the one that has the keyboard in the front, and that will refuse to boot if it doesn't have a PS2 mouse. Will it boot? Alright. It found the disk. Got it. Boot it. Well, starting to boot from the disk. Trying to figure out the memory. Alright. Checking root file system. It's a very loud disk. Replay complete, block clean, HP logic. Oh, that's an older version. It has HP instead of Agilent. It's gonna boot. Ta-da! Alright. Okay, so definitely it was a bad disk. And now we have this one. So what we can do is doing. Okay, it's passing everything. It's gonna work. Alright. We have an old version of the software. Please connect mouse to the panel connector. I did. Did I put it the wrong way? No. Okay, it doesn't like it because it doesn't think it has a mouse. Let's try another mouse. I was told that not all mice do work. Let me give it another restart and see if it likes this mouse better. Okay, try again. Yeah, Microsoft mouse it likes. Alright. It's a little tired Microsoft mouse, but that's all we need. And it's a Hewlett Packard. It doesn't have the ugly Agilent logo. 1999. Right. Register software for update notification. Okay, so it's an empty instrument, so it comes up with nothing in there. Okay, it boots! Yeah! Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is get the drive sucked out. You just connect the two. There is a little switchy over here that says host. So you want that to become a host. So that becomes the host. I want to power this with this power supply, which is all what's left of my compact Presario from the 1990s. And it's a very proprietary supply. It took me forever to figure out how to start it up. It needs 1K between the gray and the black. Go figure, if it grounded doesn't work, you take 10K, it doesn't work either. I don't know in which order I have to do this. I'll assume that I need the disk on first. And then when it's up, I'll get that going. Oh, it's doing something. Yep, disk activity. I think that's all you have to do. It's just going to transfer the content of the disk over here, and then we'll just try it back into the machine and see how it works. Okay, so it seems to have finished and took a while. It's a very slow SCSI disk. I'll take that off and I'm going to look at it on the computer. Okay, I looked at it in the computer. There is one 4.4 gig file, which is the dump of this disk, but there's also a log file that tells me that there was two sectors he had problems with. One, it could get it on second try, and the second one, it could never get it. So there's one sector that it could not get out of the drive that is damaging the drive itself. So it's a bit suspect, but I'm going to try it anyhow. I am not sure if I need to power it by something else, or if it will manage to power itself just from the SCSI termination. This time we have a host, so there is a chance it can do it. Yeah, I see power to the drive, so I might not need any extra power on this one. Found the drive, yes. HP Logic works. Fantastic, it boots off the SD drive, no problem. Oh, it doesn't like that I don't have a mouse connected to it, sorry. I did it again. And if you connect the mouse after the fact, it doesn't work. Okay, so try it again. Anyhow, our disk image is suspect because the disk is suspect in the first place. It has one bad sector, which is probably why it was pulled. The second thing I could do is suck the data from the other disk, and then the third thing that we could do is reinstall with latest software. And the good thing is that to change from one software to the other, I just change the SD card. It's pretty easy. It's not booting significantly faster from the SD card just because the SCSI bus is so slow. I think it's implemented at 5 megabit per second max. Then it tells me that this is version A.1.40.00. Yeah, that was remarkably simple. Connect the original drive to the SCSIknife in host mode, turn the power on in any order, and the disk will be automatically copied onto the SD card. Then revert the SCSIknife to normal mode, connect it in place of the original drive. You don't even need to connect it to a power supply, as it will get its power from the data cable itself. And voila, the disk has been cloned. Now that we have done this successfully, there is one more simple thing that I can try to avoid the dreaded reignition process. What about cloning the disk from my other B instrument and try to run it on the A? It has a much more up-to-date Agilent revision of the software. Okay, trying with the disk from the other analyzer that booted in an Agilent version, and actually it tells me that's going to be version A02.00, so also an early Agilent version. I think the latest one is, can't remember, 6.0 or 8.0. Let's try that. No. Powering the reverse order this time, see if that works too. Yep, works just as well. So it's blinking happily here, so it's reading the disk. And it's going to take another half hour or something like that. So I'll come back and we'll try that. Alright, it's done. Let's see if it got all the sectors, because that's another benefit I get from copying it. It will just tell me in the log file if all the sectors were read correctly. Okay, this one, it tells me it read without any problem. Actually, I just figured it was an IBM disk, probably more reliable than the Seagate one. It should now boot with the Agilent logo. There we go. It's booting equally well. It's an Agilent thing now. Dang it. Oh, it has a fail with the LAN. Interesting. Okay, evil Agilent. Huh. It didn't like it. Oh, no. Yeah, it came up. Oh, here we go. I just had to wait enough. Okay, so it does work. My only problem is that it doesn't have the LAN. Alright, close but not quite. The A is back alive, booting and running version 2 of the software. But the install I copied from the B has the wrong drivers for the network card. I think I know why. The A has a 10 megabit Ethernet interface, whereas the B has a 100 megabit Ethernet interface, the one that blocks the access to the battery. So in the end, I am super happy that the hardware works, but I can't escape the reignition process, HP's poetic name for a bare metal reinstall of the software. That calls for a CD-ROM, which image you can fortunately get online. However, it will need to be read from a CD-ROM drive, and not any CD-ROM drive. Not only do you need a SCSI CD-ROM drive, but you need one that's compatible with the notoriously finicky HP unit. For the B model, it's simple as it has a drive integrated at the back, provided it still works. But if it's dead, as many are, or if you have an A that lacks the CD-ROM reader altogether, you have to find and attach a compatible external SCSI CD-ROM drive. Or so I thought. Spoiler alert, that is going to be another unexpected struggle. But in the end, we will discover a dead simple workaround that does not need the external CD-ROM drive. So in the next episode, we'll go for a reignition. You'll see it's not rocket science. Oh wait, it is.